What is up, Friday Night Dorks? We are back for another special one. And I feel like Mark, myself, and Kevin were reaching out to Josh and kind of wondering what he was doing in the early days. And there was like this almost like garage man cave type aspects, especially when you first checked out his Instagram. I should say also, I'm sorry, Mark is sick. I forgot to mention that he's got the flu tonight, so he was going to be on here. I know he's really excited to just promote and be a part of everything you're doing, Josh. But the flu knocks down everybody. So get well soon here, Mark. For the people that are newer to our show, especially for 2025, we've interviewed Josh. It was episode 31 a couple months ago. And the reality is, a lot of people, to be fair to you, Josh, didn't really see the vision on how it was going to work. But at the same time, I think it's like when you see like a new concept car or something, and you're just seeing the shell of the car. I mean, how are you going to really picture the engine, if you will, the river, all of the microbial life, the plants, the roots, everything that you actually need, the whole engine of this system that you were building. So I wanted you to kind of explain what you've been doing to catch everybody up if they haven't seen episode 31 again, if you want to check that out. And then we have a couple of videos we're going to go into depth with this, where he's going to be able to also answer a lot of your questions. I know a ton of people have been asking how to do this. So I think there's going to be a lot of people in time, man, when they understand more about what you're, how you're achieving this, Josh, that, you know, there'll be I would hope, the respectful and always give you shout out copycats of kind of doing that same thing. Want to give a shout out also to the co-host Kevin tonight. Back in action, man. I'm excited to have you where, you know, you don't have all those extra activities going around you. I know that's hard to concentrate, and we're going to be able to dive deeper into this one. So throw it over to you, Josh, and then let's get into it.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me back on.
Absolutely. So again, do you mind like kind of going, one day you walk into your garage and you're like, you know what, I want to build an amusement park in here, and I want some cannabis, I want some shrimp, I want some fish. Fuck it, I want some turtles, and you know, I mean, it seems like you're going full ecosystem. So please explain that to us, and then we'll get into it.
Well, it didn't quite start off that way. I mean, I didn't actually walk into the garage and be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But it's a collaboration of many years of just doing different things. And I, to be honest with you, I really didn't think it was possible to do until I, started listening to, actually, it was you and Leighton Morris on live. I think it was Living Soil Conversations. Y'all did that show like 3 or 4 years ago. And I heard Leighton talk about the horizontal method. And then I saw Marco do it, and he did it, and then he grew some fire out of his bed. And I was like, okay, well, this horizontal method, I need to learn more about it. So I just kept researching more and more, and it was all about Leighton. Leighton was the one who really was giving all the information about it, and there really wasn't a lot of information to go around about it, other than a few people who are trying it that I could find on the internet. So basically, I just followed the lead of Leighton. I followed the lead of Marco, and I did kind of my own little twist on it. I did play with the sand and silt. That's the key to the whole thing, and I had resources here on my property because I live on a freshwater reservoir. So that's kind of the key to the whole thing, is that sand and silt. So the sand and silt, once you mix organic matter with the sand and silt, and basically what I did was, walking around my property, I could see I have a creek that runs into the reservoir. So and it comes in from underground from from the Chickahominy reservoir. I mean, from the Chickahominy River. So that's if you the property line here, I have the Pamunkey River. So I live in the Tidewater region of Virginia. So I have like 7 rivers like coming into the Chesapeake Bay, and I live in between 2 of them. I live in between the Pamunkey and the Chickahominy, and in between those 2 rivers is a reservoir, and one of these rivers, the Chickahominy, runs a creek right on my property. Actually, it comes in underground and comes up, and it feeds the reservoir. So what I did was go down there and just kind of observe what was going on down there, because I kept hearing Leighton talk about sand, silt, and clay. Sand, silt, and clay. That's what makes up soil. And to me at the time, I didn't really understand, because I was buying bagged soil, perlite. You know, you go to the grocery store and you're looking for the best. At the time, I was just looking for, soil. And living soil really wasn't a big thing then. It was more, Fox Farm. That's what I kind of started with. I went into Ace Hardware and they had Fox Farm. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. There it is, Fox Farm. So that's what I started with. And that kind of stuff doesn't have sand, silt, and clay. This is what I realized over time, of course, that, this isn't soil. This is a growing medium, basically. It's a place to grow potted plants in a pot and bring these things indoors, and trying to insert sand, silt, and clay into a pot doesn't work very well. It just, you need space. So the more room you have, the more room you have for roots. And I started adding sand, silt, and clay to these 30-gallon bags. And
how much sand, silt, and clay did you ship anything?
I was shipping in a 30-gallon bag. I was doing like a half of a 5-gallon bucket in a 30-gallon bag. So if I had, let's say, if I was using a yard and a half for a 30-gallon, not a yard, a cubic foot of bag, basically. I get 2 bags of soil usually works for a 30-gallon bag. That's with me doing it in a horizontal method. So I'm in a grassroots bag. They have that lining, that plastic lining, the living soil bags, and they have that 4-inch gap at the bottom. I was using that 4-inch gap to put my sand, my rocks, my sand, and my silt, my clay, all that down into that air gap there. And that's where my reservoir was going. And then I would put my soil on top, and then I put my mulch layer, and that's when I was growing it. And I was going hydrophobic. Everything, the soil was going hydrophobic super fast, and I wasn't adding the organic matter to the soil to be able to not go hydrophobic, basically. So what I learned by using 30-gallon bags is that I needed to go into a 4x4. I just needed to go bigger. And so I went into a 4x4, and I did the same horizontal method in the 4x4. And that's when I kind of started really taking notes and really videoing every day on my Instagram, like what was going on, how this bed was doing. And that's why the cannabis, the first grow was great. The second grow really wasn't all that great, because I didn't do anything to the bag, because I wanted to see how long this bed could go with just water. With just me giving it water and not anything else. How long and how many plants or how many runs could I get through? And it turns out I could get through 1.5, basically. The plants kind of ran out of steam towards the end in the 4x4. And I was like, damn, how can I get it?
I don't want to, but in the early days and like Overgrow and in the early forums and stuff, that's why Living Soil actually got a bad rap, is because people were using the soil, going there and saying, okay, I tried to reuse my soil and it looked like, just deficiencies left and right. So that's why I'm saying with this kind of stuff, even where you're almost branching into, it's almost like you get to create the name for this, So whatever this is, some kind of aquaponics, indoor living soil merge that, Josh creation or, whatever it is, man. I think that's that next level aspect where people are going to start to realize like, wow, okay, closed loop. Okay, next level closed loop would be, in my opinion, like you had mentioned, the 4x4 beds, any kind of raised bed moving from fabric pots. And now this is not such a closed loop system that you're watering the plants with a circular amusement park. And so do you mind kind of going deeper into how you are watering the plants? So like, how is the water getting to the plants like that? How are you not overwatering and flooding? Because there's even brands out there that promise, all this expert watering, and some of us have seen it flood entire commercial grow rooms and stuff. So how did you manage all of that stuff?
Well, like all right, so that's the kind of thing. That's what I kind of learned with the 4x4. So the water management is everything in this. And so basically, how could I manage the water? I thought about blue mat. I thought about all these different, types of, watering systems of how I could get water. And I kept thinking in my head, I was like, I want a creek. How does Nate? And when I walk down to the bottom of the hill here, I see that creek. And when I look on the sides of this creek, there's just this beautiful moss. Everything is green. There's no pests. There's no pest damage on any of these green leaves. The moss is just beautiful. I'm like, damn. I was like, how can I bring that moss inside and put it in a 4x4 and see if it can root, and see if I can get it to root. And that's what I did with that 4x4. But I realized that the moss needs a stable place to be. It needs to be on a tree. It needs to be on a rock. It needs to be something that's not degrading down into the soil. And basically, it needs, if you put it on top of anything other than a piece of wood or a rock, the soil underneath that moss, gets degraded and it shrinks on you, and then, the moss dies. And plus, the moss needs constant water. It needs a wood. You'll find it in shaded areas in the woods. You're not going to find it in the sun. It's always going to be next to a water puddle or water source. So in my head, I was like, how can I bring this moss in and incorporate it into my bed, but at the same time, keep moisture separated? Basically, it's really complicated once I got it into my head. But then once I moved it over into the big system, I realized that it's the creek, and it's the sand and the silt and the clay mixture. So in the bottom of a creek, if you go to a river or you go to a creek system up in the mountains, you're going to see in the bottom of that creek a different color sand and silt, because it's been cleaned over thousands, however long that creek system's been there. That sand and silt is constantly being flushed, constantly. So that's the cleanest water. It's the cleanest sand and silt in the center of the creek. But as you move up the edges of that, it gets more organic matter. You get more organic matter, and more organic matter gets added to that sand and silt from the trees dropping their leaves, from all the, vegetation around that creek is falling. But what goes in the creek gets flushed down. So the trick to all of this is the proper mixture of organic matter in the creek. It has to be clean. So basically, all I did was clean. I went down to the reservoir. I went down to that little stream system that I have, and I got, a 5-gallon bucket of that sand and silt. And I brought it up, and I spread it out over all over my driveway, and let it cook. And what I did was I cooked out all that bad biology, the smell, basically. So once the color changes, it was a dark brown when I brought it up. By the time the sun cooks it down into a into a really light sand color. But the organic matter is still there. Okay, so the organic matter is still present in the sand and silt, but I've gotten rid of the bad biology. So I've basically composted it right there on my driveway. And that comes from Leighton. That came from Leighton Morris. That idea is a Leighton Morrison idea. He recommended, if you do this, you clean it first. So you either lay it out on your driveway and cook it and let the sun cook it. And then what I did was take it a step further and put it in my wheelbarrow. Okay, so once I cooked it, now I have to clean that sand, silt, clay, and organic matter. I want to clean the organic matter and most of the clay. I just want the sand and the silt in the creek itself. So in the bottom of the creek, All I want is clean sand and silt. I don't want any organic matter in there. Also, that goes for inside the fish pond. At the bottom of the fish pond, I really don't want a whole lot of organic matter. I just want a little bit to sustain plant life, but not enough to contaminate the pond, if you understand what I'm saying. So the center of the creek, it's got clean sand silt. There's no organic matter. And as the creek goes up, I wrapped the sand and silt up over top of the creek wall. And as I did that, I was adding organic matter to the sand and silt. So as you come up out of the creek, you're entering into the moss section of of the creek. So you're coming up over top of that rock wall, and you're placing the sand and silt and clay with that organic matter. And then you're placing the moss on top of that to hold it and withstand it and to get those moss roots going into that sand, silt, and clay. It's an enormous wicking machine. I mean, it wicks like you wouldn't believe. If you go back in my Instagram feed, you'll see the beginning where I had moss all the way around, and I thought I had a leak in the creek. I really did. I thought the thing was leaking. See, that's the hole.
So are you adding water? And if you are, how much are you adding?
Right now in the wintertime, I am adding about 2 gallons every, I don't know, probably 24 to 36 hours. I have to add about 2 gallons, 2.5 gallons. But the dehumidifier right now.
How are you determining your levels? Sorry, Josh. How are you determining your water levels? What are you looking at?
I'm looking at the wood in the pond. So I can look at the wood. You can see that I have wood in the pond, and that wood comes up out of the pond. So as the water level drops, I can see where the water has been on that wood.
I understand.
Yeah.
So you're talking about all the moss that was up around the bank just before that.
Yeah, you see that moss there, that's the tricky part. See, what I had to do was, at first I had all this covered. I had all the moss covered on all the edges, and what the plan was that this was going to wick some water, but I didn't know I didn't know how much water it was going to wick. And that was the key part. Like, how was I going to regulate how much water was getting into the bed? So the whole secret to it is the level of sand and silt, the thickness of it. And once I figured out how thick I needed to be, I laid a thickness basically as I put the soil in, and then before I put the mulch layer down, I just ran that silt layer, that sand, silt, and organic matter layer from the top of the creek all the way across the soil. And then I put my mulch layer on. Now that creek is wicking that that sand, silt, and clay, and that moss is wicking water up out of the creek, all the way up over the wall, into the soil, and all the way up to the rock wall because of that sand, silt, and clay. So that layer of sand, silt, and clay is actually wicking water all the way through the top layer, the top 2 inches, I might add, the top, 2.5, 3 inches, where you want that water to be most of the time. And come to find out, it stays constant, and it doesn't overdo it. So it's nature's way of like maintaining a constant moisture level.
What's your water temperature typically?
The water temp right now is right at 71. It's been dipping. That we've been having some cold days. It's like 15 right now, I think. But
hey, so that's a good shot right there. Let me ask you some questions. So what kind of plants have you added to this whole setup? I know you've actually added quite a few now. I see the Venus flytrap there. I see some
Yeah, I got.
grasses you put in. You mistakenly put in namesake bamboo. I think you had discussed that on a video. Tell us what you've added, please.
Yeah, the lucky bamboo. That's just something
Yeah.
that was just something I found at the daggone Petco when I went there. I was just messing around. I went in town and we were in an area that had the Petco. Let me run in here and see what they got. And I had a couple. They had a couple of snails. So I bought some snails and I bought a couple of algae eaters. And they had that lucky bamboo, which a lot of people were misconstrued. And that was my fault. You know, I didn't say in the video that it's not actually bamboo. It's I forget the scientific term of it, but it has no relation to bamboo whatsoever. It
Other
doesn't
than it
grow.
looks just like bamboo.
It just looks like bamboo. Yeah.
And so you talk about the lily pad often. How's that coming? I saw it was getting a little
That's
bit
doing.
even bigger.
Yeah, as soon as I put the thermometer, I mean the heater in the pond. Yeah, I cranked the temperature because I had the temperature down real low at the beginning. For the first month, I wanted to keep the temperature low because if I didn't, things would have just bloomed out of control. The algae would have been 10 times worse. So I wanted, and plus I'm in winter here in Virginia, so you know it's super cold. I didn't want to try.
Do you think you'll have to remove algae whenever if it gets warmer during the summertime in there? It gets up into
Yeah,
the 80s or something?
I'm removing it every day now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just out of the creek though. The pond is staying super clean. The creek is where all the algae is growing. You can see it really starting to grow. It really starts up at the top there where it enters, and then by the time it gets back down to the pond, it's nice and clean. Well, cleaner, I should say, right now. But all I'm doing is it's string algae. So all I got to do basically is take my finger in there and just pull it
Sure.
right on up the line and wheel it up on my finger and put it in a
Now,
little pile.
Josh, you've added some minnows in there. Now, I have a question about these
Yep.
minnows. There's a rumor going around that you actually got these minnows out of the belly of a bass.
Yeah, I rescued them out the belly of a bass.
How
Yeah.
about that now? That's getting into Mother Nature right there. That's getting into nature's metal stuff. Cut open a fish, rip out the babies, and put them in your own pond.
That's right. That's right. You don't deserve them.
So, wow.
No. I went to the this little bass and bait and tackle shop here. Ed Allen's Bait and Tackle up here at Ed Allen's campground, and the kid in there sold me some bullheads and some other little yellow minnows that they use for bass fishing out there.
And so you've got the minnows in there, and you tell us about the shrimp. How are they doing?
Shrimp are doing great. I was expecting them to lose a few, but so far I think I put 4 or 5 in, and I spotted 4 of them today. And yeah, they're doing great. And I thought the bullhead.
You got any crawdads in there?
Crawdad got 8. Is the only thing I can figure.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I think the snake. I think Leroy got the crawdad. The crawdad was the first thing I put in here when there was nothing in here. I found that crawdad up in the mountains when me and my wife went up there. And I guess he got unlucky and just happened to walk into my bucket. And yeah, and I put him in there. He was doing great. I saw him for a while, and then one day he was just gone. And then I went in there. And this is when I was having trouble with the overflow. Because if you go back into my reels, you'll see that I had to take this thing apart 6 or 7 times.
I remember.
Yeah. It wasn't. There was a couple times where I was sitting in my chair, just really like, is this gonna work? Like, like I was second guessing myself a couple times, but once I figured out that the sand and the silt had to be in different volumes and in different structure, basically, so you have to remove all the organic matter out of it to put it in the creek, but then you want that organic matter to increase as you're coming up out of the creek, because if without the organic matter it doesn't wick. So you need the organic matter in that sand and silt to actually wick that water up into your soil. So and that came from Leighton too, you know, because Leighton said that he had somebody working on trying to get a mixture right in the soil to wick, and I'm sure there is a way to get that mixture right, but getting the mixture right while mixing it into your soil would be impossible for me. So what I did was I just thought to myself, I said, well, everything, when I stick a shovel down into the ground, it's not mixed together. It's layers. It's all in layers. Everything is boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
And you can almost see history right there as you look, you know, just, you know, years and years and years of buildup. And some layers are thicker and blacker than others, where you might have got a heavier, you know, leaf fall, where, you know, piles of leaves fell. We didn't have snow for 10 years or whatever, and you got a heavier, thicker mulch layer in one spot, and then you got, you know, 30 years of, you know, hardly anything. It's just, you can see it all right there. So what I did was, instead of trying to mix everything, I just layered it just like in nature. So at the bottom of the creek, there's sand, silt, and clay with the organic matter, but I cleaned it. I basically cooked it with the sun before I put it in the bottom of the bed. So I made sure that there wasn't any, you know, bad bacteria, or, you know, I let it sit out there for a long time. And it got up in the 90s, so I made sure that the color was completely, you know, tan, basically, before I put it in the bottom of my bed. And
take a second. Tell us what you're growing. What strains are you growing in the setup here?
Okay, so that one that I'm just pointing at right there, that's Jolly Pond Farm. That's his Wild Blue. That's a couple of gelato strains mixed together. It's
How many plants are right there?
there's
Like two?
There's 4 plants right there.
Okay, there's 4.
Yeah, there's 3 small ones. One of them's way over in the corner. You can't really hardly see it. It's a smaller one. It's weird because I've got one big plant out of all the groups. So there's four groups here, and so I have 4 sections, and each section has different genetics in it. And each one of those genetics had a, you know, one that just shot up over top of all the rest. So the ones in the center there, those are Marco's Divine. Those are Divine Pine. The York Cherry Grandes, the ones in the back there. And then I got Blue Ridge Genetics over here, which is a strawberry strain that he has. And that's the old 4x4 bed. I turned that into a worm bed. So that is actually set up in a horizontal system as well. And so what I did was, I'm just going to turn that into my IMO/worm bed. So I'm cooking IMO in that 10-gallon bag there. And then once it's done cooking, I'll just dump it over into the 4x4 and let the worms run through it. And then I'll transplant the worm castings into the bed as I need it, or use them however I want to, you know, when they're ready.
Are your plants now, like, currently speaking, are they entering week 2? Is that how I understand it? Are you around there?
They are. What I did something different this time. I've never done this before, so, you know, it was kind of an experiment.
Yeah.
But I know it'll work, but I just don't know how long the flowering cycle is going to take now by me ramping. Instead of me just going straight to 12-12, what I did was I've ramped it down 30 minutes each day for 2 weeks. So now today I'm down to 10 hours of light a day and 14 hours off. But I did it slowly over 2 weeks' time, hopefully not to stress the plant out. And hopefully over those 2 weeks, you can definitely tell that they're already starting to stretch. So they know that they're going in, you know, that flowering mode. So I'm just going to go ahead and let them go and see what happens. Basically, since this video, they've gotten a lot taller since this video. I don't know which one this is. Is this today's or no?
No, this one's from YouTube, but I like that the plants
Okay.
were smaller in this one because they can see more of the amusement park aspect.
Yeah. Yeah, I like walking in there now when the plants are all like, I've got quite a few branches now. Like Marco's divine pine is like branching over and like covering over top the creek almost. So it's like my vision coming. Like I told Kevin, you know, I told you, I was like, I wanted my cannabis plants to be like my red oaks, you know, hovering over my creek. And that's where we're at right now. We've got my cannabis plants basically just hovering over my creek, just kind of being my red oaks of the little amusement park there. There's an algae eater. That's one of them. I put 3 of those in there. He's rare. You rarely see him. I tell you that. I was shocked when I saw him. He gets up underneath them logs, and he's like the crab. Like I know the crab's in there. Like I've seen him like one, maybe twice since I put him in. But they're elusive. Like they don't like it. As soon as I stick my head over the pond, everything seems to just scatter. You know, it's like they're looking for. They're like looking at me. Like they know I'm there. Like as soon as I stick my head, like if I bring the camera over, it's like like the little shrimp, all the little minnows. Like you know, they can see you for sure, and they just run and hide.
Josh, what do you think about from the like? I guess it's more like metaphysical side of things, but since the plants are being fed a current moving water, what are your thoughts on that? Like, you know, you're almost kind of bringing Mother Nature indoors as best you can, and now taking it to the next level with the water moving around. Leighton, a few other people out there would talk about the properties of water, and you can see it in Mother Nature how important it is for it to be moving, so it can almost like clean itself with the microbial life. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's 100%. Yeah, it has to be moving. Like dead spots in your spot aren't good in your aquarium. Like if you have an aquarium, anybody will tell you, you know, you need that constant flow. So that constant motion, and I think, you know, like I said, I'm no scientist, so I really don't know the science. That's why I would love to talk to Leighton about this, because he would be able to break it down for me. Like the aspect of where the moss meets the creek. I hear, like I've watched videos of where they've talked about moss being microbial havens, and I know it's a haven for, it's like a mini forest for these rove beetles and all these other, like in a terrarium. You know, they put moss in a terrarium. You can have all the moss will grow pretty much anywhere, as long as there's moisture. You know, and getting that moisture correct was the hardest part of the whole build, because I was way too much, and I basically had to take it all apart. Because for a while, like I said, I thought I had a leak. It wasn't leaking. It was just wicking water over the wall. So what I had to do was take all the sand, silt, and clay out and filter it through my wheelbarrow. I put it all in a wheelbarrow, and I just used a water hose, and I washed the hell out of it, getting all that organic matter out until I got it to a certain color. And the color was what I was looking for, because that's the only way I could judge how much organic matter was actually in it. So basically, the cleaner it looked, the less organic matter it had in it. So as I added sand and silt to the bottom of the creek, I made sure that the bottom of the creek has the cleanest, and then I worked that organic matter into the sand and silt up that creek wall, and that is what is wicking up into that moss, and that moss holds all that biology. So once that moving water is wicked up, you know, I'm assuming that water is stopped, but it still has all that microbial life in it, and it's being wicked up that sand, silt, and clay, which the sand, silt, and clay has microbial life in it, into the moss, which has more microbial life. And what goes on after that, going into those plants, I'm not sure, but they love it.
What are you feeding these plants, Josh?
The only thing I have done to these plants is foliar feed, some FAA, some OHN, and some IPM from Country Roots, which is all foliar, and I mix them all at the same time. So I'm doing a few drops of FAA, I'm doing a few drops of OHN, and a few drops of the IPM that Country Roots makes,
Are you
which is
adding in your worm compost over there? Your vermicompost anytime?
yeah, I haven't even used that yet. I haven't. That's brand new, and I have like the only thing that's feeding these plants right now is the soil, the sand, and the silt, the clay, and the creek water that's being wicked up into the beds. So the beds, have that lip on the edge of them. So the creek wall is the stopping point. So I had a couple of people concerned about when I was dropping rabbit shit into the soil beds, and they were like, you don't want to get rabbit shit or any kind of mammal feces into your pond or your aquaponics system, and that is 100% true. You do not want to put manure or any type of manure into your fish pond or your fish creek or whatever you got going on. You don't want shit in it. So that's why the walls of the creek are higher than the soil. So if whatever I'm putting into the soil cannot run off into the creek. So even if I were to water, have to water the soil beds, all the runoff's just going to run right into the creek wall and run down to the bottom and funnel down into my reservoir and into that whole system, where then I can then remove it from the reservoir if it ever did fill up too much, like it was before in the beginning. But once I regulated that water, once I removed a lot of that moss from the top of the creek, which was wicking up too much water, I only needed to put these strips of sand and silt running up to the moss. So instead of connecting all of the moss to the sand and silt, I would only connect a strip of it. And then just having that little strip connect to the moss, that moss would then wick all the way across it. Didn't matter like how long the moss was, somehow or another, just that little strip connecting to that moss would then distribute that water all the way across wherever it could go, however far it was going, that's how far it would go. Once I realized,
do you have moss then? Not just is the moss? Did you focus the moss just on the lip of the bank, or did you bring it back over the plants also?
it just needs to be on the lip of the bank. It just needs to be connected to both. So basically, if it's connected to the soil and then connected to the creek system, that's all it has. Once it's connected to that creek system, and you can see right there on the edge there, that's the only spot that's actually connected. The rest of it, there is no sand, silt, and clay right there. You can see it's not connected, but it stays moist all the time because it's connected over in the other corner. So it's wicking water all the way over to that side. And that's what I didn't realize. I had it all connected when I only needed one corner of it connected, and it would wick it all the way across. So I don't have to water anything. I don't have to keep the moss wet. I don't have to water the plants. I don't have to do anything. It's all being done by Mother Nature. Nature is doing it for me. It's the natural way of how it happens down at my creek bed down here at the reservoir. So I was down there one day, I was just looking at it, and I was noticing how the moss was just growing on the wood. The wood was touching the water, but the moss was wet. The moss wasn't touching the water. The wood was, and the wood was then wicking the water up to the moss. The moss was then wicking, the water out of the wood. And I was like, maybe I can take the moss and connect it to the sand and silt and clay and have it do the same thing in my bed and wick the water up out of the creek into my bed. And that's what it's doing. It's basically, its root system is wicking into my soil system. And then once it hits that other clay, sand, silt, and clay layer that I have laid just below the mulch layer. And then that wicks all the way across the whole bed. And I don't have to do anything. And
So I have
then
a question again. How, compared to the first month of you creating this, how much time are you spending in there in comparison to, say, the last month now? Like, I'm sure you're in there a bunch. And how has it eased up yet?
yeah, it's easy now. Most of the time I'm sitting in there right now. I'm either like just pulling some algae out of the creek. I'm plucking some leaves off the plants, but most of the time I'm just sitting there staring at it, wondering what I'm going to do next. Like, what's my next move, basically. And there's still a lot of things to do as far as in my head. What you're seeing right there is cool. I'm gonna tell you that right now. By having that IMO bag sit on that top of that bed, did you see? You can see the difference in color when I lifted that bag up. The heat from the IMO bag up underneath of that, like in the bed, is having a different effect right underneath that 10-gallon bag of IMO. So I just have it sitting on there, and just as it was cooking, the worms were coming up to the bottom, like they were attracted to the heat. So that was something cool that I noticed in that IMO bag.
Since these are, all of this is obviously chess moves, and I've noticed in the two videos now, seems like one side you have some kind of rock, and on the other side you have a different kind of rock. Why did you choose to do that? Do you mind enlighten us a little bit more on rock choices?
There is no choice. It's all random except for the rock wall and the river rock. The river rock, what the rocks you see sitting in the creek, are by choice. They are. One of them is. It had a lot of mineral in it. It looked like granite, but it had like these stripes, and it had almost like that. Like, it looked like fool's gold almost in it. It had a lot of minerals in it. So in my head, I was like, I'm gonna put that in the middle of the creek for some for some for some mineral content, basically. And I'm glad I did, because I've been setting algae on it, and the algae is actually pulling biology up out of the rock, and it's actually eating the algae that I've been sitting on the rock. So now all I have to do is take the algae ball that I have sitting on the rock and transfer it over into my IMO bag, and that biology that's eating that algae should transfer over into my IMO, and we're gonna have some biology that's basically coming and breaking down mineral like rock. I mean, so hopefully that's a good thing and not a bad thing. I don't know, but like I said, I'm not a scientist, so all this is.
So do you think you could control the amount of algae growth by adding oxygen into the water somewhat, or a bubbler even, or something?
Yeah, we just added a bubbler actually when we added the fish in. So there's a bubbler in there now. So we're into day one, or going into day two tomorrow, of having more oxygen in the water. We're going into day 4 of having a heater in there. So we're raising the temperature slowly in the pond. We've added air slowly. So basically what I wanted to do was wait at least a month, maybe a month and a half, before I did put a heater in, before I put fish in. I wanted everything to settle in. I wanted to make sure that I had the water right, because I've noticed that it could take 9-10 days for me to even see the water coming down into the hole. So in my trap hole is what I'm talking about. Like, where it all funnels down into. If I had a problem, if I was leaking too much water, I wouldn't know it for 10 days. It would take that long. to get down there and funnel all the way down. And I would be like, shit, maybe I just sit back and wait before I might still have to drain the pond. I still might have to remove things. I still might have to change this, change it. You have to remember, this is all, you know, it's all the first time I'm doing this. So, you know, it's all a learning experience as I go. So it's trial and error at its finest. And I've learned so much. Like the next time I build one of these will be so much easier. Like I could do it in half the time because I already know the changes that I want to make. I already know that the creek needs to be made differently. I know it needs to be set up differently. There are definitely changes that need to be made to the whole system to make it actually better than what it is right now. So it's definitely not perfect by any means, but it's a start, and the plants love it. So as long as they like it, I don't care. You know, it's fine by me. But like I said, in 3 years, we will know what this is going to turn out to be, because it'll be a jungle in here in 3 years. So like I'm going to have so many plants in this room. It's going to be crazy. It's going to look like a rainforest in here.
Have you seen any pest issues going on?
Nope. No pests whatsoever. It's crazy. It's quite insane, but it's so much diversity down there. I released, you know, those my beneficials, you know, from Mark, and I like I said, once I did that, I've done the nematodes. So I've done beneficial nematodes, I've done the beneficial insects, and I've done the IPM with the OHN and the FAA.
Nice.
That's it.
Yeah, he's referring. So he's referring to. Let's plug Mark for a minute. He's referring to Mark's fungus gnat eliminator.
Yeah.
That stuff eliminates fungus gnats. It's the only thing that I've ever used that actually does eliminate fungus gnats. So don't waste your time on anything else. Well, that's good that you don't have any issues or that you're seeing anything in there, because you know with nature, even if you know, I'd expect with all the nature you've put in there that you've got whatever is considered good and bad, both bugs in there, you know, and they're just all working together. There's enough space, enough material for everybody to kind of function well, and it should work well, you know, as long as you're recreating the environment that it works with. You know?
Yeah, I would recommend you know, to be fair, this is a brand new grow. So that's how a lot of like newer growers sometimes get cocky, is because it is a brand new grow, and then there's no real IPM issues until the second or third flip.
Yep.
Usually with that also, it's more of like, you know, it's definitely not grown with this kind of microbial life to start off. I would say maybe playing around with some sundews. Are you familiar with that, Josh? That way you have more of a canary in the coal mine kind of thing. They work like sticky traps. And then there's also something called a monkey cup or a pitcher plant. I think they're called napines. If somebody's better at plants than I am, I can't remember the like Latin phrase or whatever. But they're pitcher plants. You can have them pop up, and they have these little pitchers on the side of them, Josh, that fill up with this like water liquid. It's like a sugary water. And I've always liked to use that as the canary in a coal mine in some kind of new setup. That way you can walk by and just look at the cups every couple days or so and see if there is some kind of infestation.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because that is going to come in the spring and summer. You know, there's going to be something that's going to come, because that is, I mean, it's an oasis for a human being. I can't imagine what that would be like if you were some kind of like a praying mantis or something, Kevin, just chilling in there like. I mean, this would be.
I'll tell you, the black soldier flies are everywhere in here, and I see them.
They cycle through.
Yeah, they. I mean, I've got them in my. I've got the larva in my 4x4, and then I've got them just flying around, chilling on cannabis plant. I don't know if you saw the video of them just chilling on the creek. They would sit up. They would literally land on the creek up at the top and ride the creek all the way down, and then just fly off, and then literally fly back up land on the creek, ride it down. I watched the same black soldier fly do that twice in one day, which I was like, he is definitely just chilling. Like literally, he is playing around right now. Like he is not like doing anything other than like just playing. And that's all I've been seeing these black soldier flies doing is hanging out on the plant and like just go land on the creek and ride the creek all the way down and then fly back up and land on the creek. And it's
A
quite
literal
crazy.
amusement park going
Yeah,
on, man.
it's like yeah, it's like its own cool little like you said, it's like his amusement park. So it's quite interesting watching all this happen and play out in real time. It's fun, that's for sure. But like you said, in the third or fourth run of this, all this could be turned to crap. I don't think it will because I've learned a lot in as far as the IPM regimen, as far as having my beneficial, like the beneficials bugs in there, and just knowing about that, just having the knowledge of knowing that there are beneficial bugs out there to put in something like this. That this whole project never would have happened if it weren't for like people like Mark and people like Brian and Kev, like all you guys, Leighton, Marco, all you have something to you have a piece of this, believe me. It would not be here without all you guys. So this is just me and my ability to, and I had the resources to do it, and I thought it would be cool, and I thought I could pull it off, and I'm hoping that I can pull it off. I've gotten this far, and I think
Do you
the
mind
hard,
saying, you don't have to reveal everything, but do you mind saying like roughly what this would cost? I had a couple of people asking me,
uh,
and I told them I have no idea.
it's under $1,000.
A lot of work. Yeah, a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah,
work.
yeah. Tons of
Yeah,
labor, but like the
Yeah.
material
yeah,
costs and stuff, a
no,
thousand bucks.
yeah,
It depends on where you are in life. But to be fair, I mean, setting up a grow for $1,000 is
well, that's
Nothing.
not
pennies
that's
on the dollar compared to the early
Nothing.
days of buying tents and all this
yeah.
like rip off stuff.
Well, I
Yeah.
will say that that's not including the lights, and that's not including the building, and there's a lot more that needs to go in, but just the pond itself and building the materials, and it was just a labor of love, really. But just the pond, not including the lights and the building and everything like that. But yeah, that under $1,000 because the rock, I bought that all wholesale. I was going to Lux Stone here, and they've got piles and piles of this stuff, and they sell it wholesale. And usually they got dump trucks wheeling up in there, getting dump truck loads for big projects. I was going in there with my pickup truck and just, wheeling up on the scale, at the scale on in my pickup. And I just told the lady I wanted to go over there and pick through by hand. And she said, "Yeah, go ahead, help yourself." So I did. And I went over there and I was picking through these piles of rocks by hand, knowing in my head what I wanted to do. So through the course of 10 months, I must have went to Lux Stone probably 30 times, just back and forth. I'd go on a Monday and then have those rocks. I'd set those rocks, set them in stone, knew what I needed to do. Then I would basically look at it, go back to Lux Stone, pick, 30, 40 more dollars worth of rocks, which is a lot of rocks at Lux Stone. But I'd bring them back, set them, play with them a little bit, figure out where I want them. Then I'd set them in stone and repeat the process until I got to what you see today, which still isn't complete, by the way. Like you see in the back rock mountain where the water enters. And we're going to go a little higher with that and round it off, make it look more like a mountain. But other than that, everything else is set in stone. So you can walk around, you can walk on it if you want. Like I was walking all over it. Like you were asking me, how can I get to the center? I can stand on the pond. I can walk over to the center of the pond. I can pretty much get to any spot in the thing I can get to. So it's 12 foot long by 9.5 foot wide. So that's how big it is.
Has that fly trap eaten anything yet in front of your eyes?
Not in front of me, but it's getting healthier, so I know it's eating. I know it's, and I've seen ones like be open, and then I've seen them closed like the next day. So I haven't actually seen it. Like, I think it's probably too slow moving for me to like. I'd probably have to be there all day, but
That's
yeah,
why you want to, in my opinion, the sundews are next level to that. The Venus flytrap will probably be cool and catch a fly every now and then. But if
yeah,
you really want to see it be effective, those sundews are like a hidden secret, I think, to a new grower.
yeah. I'm gonna look into that. I might get me one of those for sure.
They're beautiful too, by the way. Beautiful plants, bright red. So when you're kind of like you were saying that you've already thought about improvements and stuff, which is kind of funny, man, to be honest, because you're gonna be like OCD with this, I guess, right? Just always improving and just making it look beautiful.
Yeah, it'll never stop. It'll never stop. Yeah.
So
That's
how
Mark.
do?
That's
That's
Marco's IMO bag.
yeah. There's no doubt. I've been using that for years.
Shut up, Marco.
So how do you how would you say that I guess the easiest way from everybody watching these videos today, you would improve on it?
Uh, well, like I said, there's going to be a turtle sanctuary coming in, and my wife asked me where the hell I was going to put it. It's actually going to go in the pond. So there's a spot in the pond where there's a pre-made hole in that rock mountain where I can stick a tube up in there, type of metal rod up in there, and I'm going to attach a platform to that, and then we're going to build a nice little turtle sanctuary where we can have a nice little turtle sliding in and out of there on that back wall of the pond back there. So they'll be able to slide in and out of the pond. And then I would improve on this in the creek system. The creek is definitely can be improved. And where I would do it would be the sidewalls of the creek. So I would build a shelf next time. So I would have the top of the rock here, and then come down, curve it down, and then build a shelf, and then dip it down into a curve, and then come back up into a shelf. I want that shelf to be able to hold that rock, and also to be able to hold plants on that shelf, but still be in the water, still be in the creek system.
What do you mean by shelf? Are you adding more material, like organic material, or more
Okay.
rock?
No, so if the creek right now is just a U basically, okay. So what I would do is come off that rock wall there and come straight down, and then kind of shelf it off, and then tip it down into a U, and then come back out of the U and shelf, and then come up. And that shelf platform on both sides of the channel of the creek would hold that rock better. It would give me a spot to build sand, silt, and clay and organic matter up, but not actually have it flow through the center of the creek channel. And that would give me spots to plant more plants. Instead of having the plants directly into the creek, I could plant plants on that shelf that's submerged in the water, but not actually in the center of the creek where the flow is. So what I want is a shelf coming up off that creek, and then coming up over top of the rock. This way I can, like I said, I can put those aquatic plants, and that's what it's really all about. It's really about, I need to get aquatic plants and roots into the creek system. So the more roots I get into the creek, the better filtration I'm going to have for my creek and my fish pond. So the more plant life I have outside of the pond is going to influence greatly how clean my water is going back into the fish pond. So the next stage of this is going to be aquatic plant. I've already started some of them with those grasses that you see there, but there's going to be more grasses going into the creek system. There's going to be more plants going into the creek system. And the next one I would build would have a shelf in that creek system for those plants to go, instead of it just dropping off a lot. When it just drops off, all the sand, silt, and clay just want to fall down into the center of the creek. So in order to build that up, instead of piling up a bunch of pea gravel like I have here now, it works great for wicking. But if I could have a little bit of a shelf there to hold that rock and hold that sand, silt, and clay in place, it would make it a lot easier to plant plants and still have it submerged into the creek. I hope I explained that somewhat. I know it's
Absolutely.
hard to see. It's hard to see, but yeah, that shelf is where that life is going to be. So right now, so if you don't have motion, like in the creek, there are spots in the creek that are like almost stagnant. They're not stagnant, but they're almost stagnant. And what I mean by that is that they're not really moving that fast, and it's allowing things to grow and flourish there. Some things are good, some things are bad, but it's allowing life to thrive in that one little spot where it has a chance to take hold and start to grow, because there's not a heavy flow going through, moving it constantly. So those are the spots that I'm looking for to plant my plants. So where I plant those plants, but I have to find those spots first. So once I find those spots in the creek where those spots that aren't moving a whole lot of water, I can plant my plant there, and that plant will tap in and clean the water for me as it flows through. So in like the biology aspect of this, like the whole microbial aspect and the natural farming aspect of all of this, it like you said, it boils down to the biology that is being wicked up out of this creek system, along with the biology that's in the soil system. So it's like having I have dual, triple root zones, really quadruple root zones in my soil system, but I also have the aquatic biology coming in from the creek as well. So I'm adding aquatic biology from the creek, all while watering my plants, and I'm getting the soil biology that I'm adding in from my KNF inputs, from like my natural farming inputs, from the OHNs, from the FAAs, from all those natural farming inputs we're putting into the soil. They stay there. They have a home to propagate and to live, because they have all these layers to live in. So instead of trying to mix all this together into a soil mix, I've just layered it in layers. So I put my soil in the middle of these layers. So I put mulch, sand, silt, and clay with organic matter. Then I put soil. Then I put more sand, silt, and clay organic matter. Then a red clay and a yellow clay layer. Then the pea gravel and bedrock. So you have clay, sand, silt, clay, and organic matter, soil, sand, silt, clay, organic matter, mulch. So these are all layers that these roots are going to go through. And each one of these layers has different biology input, has different microbial, different everything, because it's different little pocket. Like I said, there's these just different layers of biology in the soil for these plants to tap into. And I find that that's really the easiest way to just mimic what I saw outside when I stuck a shovel down into the ground. I don't see a mixture. I see layers. So I just mimicked that, and I tried to put those layers into the creek system, not creek system, but in the soil system. The creek is separate from all that. So the creek is completely separate from the soil. The water is being wicked in from the creek by that sand, silt, and clay and organic matter. And then the moss is basically the catalyst of it. It's basically the one that's distributing it it's pulling it up over the wall, and it's then tapping into the soil, and it's then that that water seeps down into that sand, silt, and clay layer that's on top of that soil, and then that just wicks it all the way up, all the way across, and it just stays super moist and super. It's that exact moisture that you're looking for, and it stays that way constant. And I don't have to mess with it. That's the great thing about it. Like once you get that mixture right of that sand, silt, and clay, it wicks water like crazy. You wouldn't believe it. It took me 2 or 3 weeks to figure it out. I mean, y'all were watching me on the damn. I was pissed some days. You can probably hear it in my voice. Some days I was like,
there is the video where I was like, he sounds like he shouldn't be making this one because he just seems so frustrated.
I was like, what the?
Those are the good ones, though, man. Those are the ones where it's like, you made it.
Yeah. I mean, it feels good to finally figure it out. Like I was sitting there one day and I was just like, you know what? Here it is. Here it is. I'm gonna strip the whole thing. I'm gonna take it all off. I was like, how can I regulate how much moisture is getting into the bed? And I already knew that I was wicking too much. So how do I get to that perfect level? So what I did was I stripped it all off, and then I put a little strip around the OK calyx there. I put a little strip around the basically all the plant spots there. I just put a little strip, and then I turned the water back on and I waited, and I didn't see any water, and I was like, okay. So I put a little bit more on. Didn't see any water for a couple days. I was like, so I put a little bit more on. And then I started seeing water. And I was like, okay, here we go. There's the water. I put too much on. So then I went back and I took off what I had just put on, and boom, I didn't have any more water issues. Now I've got that perfect ratio where it's the plants are wicking, they're growing, and they're wicking that extra moisture up out of that soil that's coming over the wall, and everything is going to line up, and just once the plants take off, it's on. I don't have to do anything. Once they take over from a seedling, if I can get them past that seedling stage on into that second stage of growth, it's game over. I don't have to do anything but foliar feed and keep my pond topped off. That's about it.
That's literally what I wanted to ask you right before I throw it over to Kevin is, are you foliar feeding at all? And have you heard of we talked about it with Jordan from Growcast, especially in a newer setup where like a little magnesium with some yucca extract and potentially some high-end kelp will greatly perk up and green up those leaves a little bit. I wanted to throw it over to Kevin real quick. What are your thoughts on foliar feeding indoor with just a few plants like this?
Yeah, I like foliar feeding a lot. If the temperature's right, this is all based on indoors. If growing in a shed, if the temperatures are right, I don't have to water in my setup for 5 to 6 days. And during that time, I like to always feed, like Josh was saying, a little bit of FAA is always a good thing. Some fermented plant extracts, those are the things I have and like to use. You can use a lot of other things. One of the products, I don't buy products much at all, but one of the companies that I'm friends with, I don't push their product or anything like that, but he sends me Ultra Bio Boost from Bioactive. It's a great foliar spray, and I've sent packages out for free in a lot of my stuff, and it's a great foliar spray to use. They perk up, everything gets green. You see it lengthen quite a bit over the next couple of days. So yeah, it's a good idea to foliar feed. The only thing you got to watch out indoors is if you got thick, bushy plants, you're getting that water down in there, and it'll stay for a long time if leaves are touching. And that can cause, in my setup, that can always cause me a little bit of issue, extra dampness that's staying on the plants.
Yeah, for people that are newer to like seeing a setup like this, I don't know if you've noticed, but in the right-hand side of this setup, he's kind of panning on the left side right now. There are these little fans, and they're oscillating in a more of like a breeze type movement. And I think when people first set up their indoor grows, they think that they need to have these massive air movements, especially from just these fans, or they don't buy an oscillating fan, so you just have air movement strictly on one plant that's causing the plants to constantly move. Those are like rookie mistakes to have it too hard on there. So this is a well built setup, and he's thought about everything. Obviously, a cannabis plant loves to be more in a breeze, so he has them blowing that way. It looked like you didn't buy the largest fan size out there, which it seemed there was like 8 inches or 6 inches, something pretty relatively small compared to some of the ones that you see at the stores. And then you're kind of just letting Mother Nature take hold. And the other cool thing I thought about this is even in like a raised bed, when you're in a commercial grow setup, the plants aren't always as healthy as you want them to be. I got to run back over here. Some of the, it's almost like some pockets are there, or like some of the plants in the right-hand corner just aren't as healthy as you would like them to be. And that's why I brought up to you, Josh, about the fact that the water was moving and everything, because you were saying obviously it's wicking. And it's obviously proof to that, because it's, I mean, this almost, I know the work and the labor, I'm not trying to dismiss all that, but once it's set up, this seems like it's going to be even easier than a living soil system, because now you have the water moving. Everything just probably will come to like a peak apex style of, you know, the hungriest predators will be in there and survive and kind of protect things. And I would imagine over time you'll get a trained eye for the extra potentials in your area of pests. And then it'll just become this little oasis that it's already, I don't know if you guys know, but on Instagram, this man is blowing up. So if you've ever wondered how to blow up on Instagram, you got to build one of these cool things.
This man is on fire on Instagram.
Yeah, it's crazy. Instagram has been good to me for sure.
So check him out at Yellow Skunk Farms. To respect everybody's time, Josh, we're going to get into some questions here. And I know everybody likes looking at it. I don't think they really like looking at our faces. So I'm just going to let it run while we're asking you these questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so from Good Vibe Terps, how much does that big old thing weigh?
Yeah, it ain't going nowhere. I know that. I have no idea how much it weighs, but it ain't going nowhere. It took a bulldozer to get it out of here.
Yeah, that's a built to last setup.
Yeah, it's not going in. I could not tell you.
Yeah,
It's
built to
it
stay.
ain't going in. I wouldn't put it in an apartment. I wouldn't, you know.
That's owning, not renting, right there.
Yes, this is owning. This is owning. This is retirement type shit right here. This is not building your mom's basement type thing.
Unless your mom's really cool.
Yeah, unless she's real cool.
Next question from Gobble Grows. Does your dehumidifier dump back into the pond?
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. Man, talk about chess moves too.
That's the top. Right. That's the top layer, the top portion. So there's two bowls you'll see, you know, and the top bowl is the dehu dripping in.
Another question. How many lights are you running and what kind of power?
I've got 5. I've got 1, 2. So that's the thing right now. I'm working on getting some new lights. All the lights I'm running right now, I've got 3 Spider Farmers and 1 chilled. The Spider Farmer is a 7,000 and a 1,000 and a 2,000, and they're strategically placed over the bed because I didn't want a lot of light over the pond. So basically the pond, if I had a lot of light over the pond, I was going to get a lot of algae in the pond.
Yeah.
I was keeping the temperature low in the pond. I was trying to keep the temperature low in the creek system as well, and so I was keeping the lights low. And to be honest with you, it was kind of a blessing in disguise by keeping the lights low, because the plants responded a whole lot better with the lights turned down low. And what I mean by low is, like, normally at this stage I'm running 500 to 600 on the meter, and I'm down at like 300, 350 right now on most
Nice.
of all these plants, and they just love it. Like the higher I go, like I noticed that they just do not like it. The lower I turn it down a little bit, the next day I came in and they looked a little better, turned down a little bit more, and bam, they were praying to the dang on light. I was like, okay, that's where they want to be. That's where I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to push them. I'm just going to, if they look healthy, they look like they're praying to the light, and that's where they need to be. So at first I was trying to raise the light and lower the light. And then I realized that instead of just doing that, I'm just going to adjust the volume a little, and adjust the voltage on it, and do it that way, because the lights I had in there were easy to move up and down. So I was just playing different things. Really, this whole thing, like I said, has just been a big experiment for me. So I've been just experimenting like crazy here in the last couple of months with the lights, with the temperature, with the dehu, with everything that's going on in here right now is all kind of just an experiment, and I'm trying to learn as I go, really. And
That's
but
why everybody's so intrigued. I mean, that, in my opinion, that's why you're blowing up on Instagram. Because
yeah, and that's
so.
that was hopefully I was hoping people would be in, because I'm gonna show you everything. I'm gonna show you, if it dies, it dies, and I apologize if I kill your plants, but uh, it's my fault, not the genetics. But yeah, like I said, if I was going to have an issue, I was probably going to have an issue with overwatering. That was my biggest problem. It wasn't the lights, it wasn't the dehu, it wasn't any of this. It was all about the water and how much I could keep out of the soil and how much I could actually get into the soil. And the lights are definitely, I need new lights, that's for sure. But yeah, we're running a chilled and some spider farmers right now. The chilled, I can't remember the wattage on it. I think it's I can't remember. I don't want to say because I can't remember what it is. I actually bought it from Marco, actually.
Hmm.
That's actually how I first met Marco. That's a funny story. I bought that light that I'm running, that chill light, bought from him a year ago. Actually, a year ago this month, I think. He put it on Instagram for sale, and as soon as I saw it, I immediately hit him up, and I went and met him, and yeah, that's his history from there.
Right
Look at
on, man.
that picture right there. That's a moss just starting to grow out of that piece of wood.
Wow. Gobble
So
Grows wanted to highlight. I've heard people talk about this, like gnarly barley and stuff from Coots back in the day and stuff. You can put some barley straw in to help on the algae. It produces an enzyme that helps break it down.
barley straw into like the creek, or like into, I'm not sure. Where would I put the barley straw?
Probably, I would assume, right near the water.
Yeah, real close, like some of that soil.
Yeah,
There's
the algae.
also, Leighton also was kind of famous for saying that you also don't want to be a moron and just constantly be tinkering with it so much that you're just constantly putting more on and more on and more on till you shoot yourself in the foot. And I
That's
think that is about as
yeah,
gold bar as it gets for
yes,
something new.
that's what I was getting ready to say. I don't want to keep messing with this and never actually get to see what it's going to be, because I keep tinkering with it. I keep moving things. And I was going to say, everything I do, I mean, if I move a rock in the creek, it changes everything. It changes the way the water flows. It changes the way the water is hitting the pond. Like I put a cannabis leaf in there the other day, and that cannabis leaf floated on down until it reached the mouth of the pond, and now it's stuck. I haven't touched it; it's just stuck there, and it's created a little extra flow there, and a little extra air pocket flow, and it's pushing up against that leaf, and it completely changed the water and how it was flowing into the pond. So everything I do has an effect. So, and like it's really wild to walk in there and see like something's been moved and I didn't move it. It's like, wait a minute, that wasn't there yesterday. This damn mouse or something has moved that from here to there. And I did have a mouse problem because, I say problem. It's not really a problem. I don't mind a few mice. Few mice are okay. I don't want 20 or 30 of them. I don't want a whole nest of them like being created. And because another thing that I haven't said, I guess, is the rock wall. I know this is a picture, but the actual side walls that the granite rock is made out of, there are holes in the side of that rock. So I left gaps, holes in that. So basically air can get in and out of there. So where the soil is packed up against that rock, there are air pockets all along that wall. It's not completely sealed up. So there's places for air and moisture and definitely different things to get in and out of that rock wall. The soil's not falling out of the rock wall, but what I'm going to do to keep the mice from going up in those holes is to put a little piece of wire mesh to keep the mice from getting up in there. That was just one issue I had here recently.
Right on, man. I want to sorry to interrupt real quick, but Kevin needs to fall off here for a second. We got some more questions, so I'll stay on with you, Josh, and ask some questions. Just wanted to throw it up to Kevin.
Hey, Josh, thanks for being here again. Uh-oh.
I'm not the best at this.
There you go. Thank you for being here, my man. I appreciate it. Super proud of your hard work and just getting to watch it all take place and watch, listening to your honesty and innocence, just kind of being like, here's how I'm doing it. So good job. That's what we want from people. We want to see the reality of it, the good and the bad. Seeing the bad typically helps us more than seeing the good. You know what I'm saying?
That's right, for sure.
Good job showing it all off. But I got to go. I appreciate everybody out here listening. Thanks for viewing. My Growcast podcast came out. It's an interview with me. It came out this week. Go listen to it. I've got genetics on sale at okcalyxshop.com. Go check that out. And other than that, guys, everybody have a good Friday. I got to go get my kids.
See you, bye.
See you, bye. See you guys.
All right. This is from Mark Nelson. Josh, how many plants did you end up in there? I think sometimes what they mean with that too is like, are you growing regular seeds? Did you find males? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've well, let's see, how many do we have in there? I think we had 12, and I was planning on cutting a few of them out. Marco's, I ended up with 2 divine pine that are not feminized, so we're keeping an eye. I'm pretty sure I could probably tell right now. I just haven't gotten a loop and gotten in there and seen if it's a male or female yet. I'm just gonna, to be honest with you, it smells so damn good. Even if it was a male, I might just seed the whole damn place with divine pine and see what I get. But there's 2 divine pine. There's 4 of the Blue Ridge that are also not feminized. So 2 divine pine and 4 Blue Ridge I'm keeping an eye on. The OK Calyx is feminized. I have 4 of those, and then I have the Jolly Pond, which are feminized. We have 4 of those.
And let's be clear too, like when you're buying feminized seeds, a lot of time this is like being done at a kitchen table with the breeder and 3 of his friends, and they're smoking blunts or puffcos or whatever they're doing, and mistakes are made. So what you want to do is, even though you bought 6 feminized seeds even from a show and it's packaged up, mistakes do happen. So you constantly, especially when you're newer to this, you want to be scanning every single day to make sure that you're not all of a sudden having an issue with the male in there. Even if you're buying feminized, that's actually where these mistakes, it's almost like there's a security blanket somehow, because you think there's no way that can happen. And that can happen because of human error. So just wanted to highlight that too. There's a lot of ways to screw up a grow, and you definitely don't want to be shooting yourself in the foot when you're first getting into it.
For sure. And yeah, if you're first getting into it too, you have a little bit of time. So if you're checking in on your plants every day, you can see it before they, spread pollen all over your grow. You can definitely see it before it happens, but you got to be in there, every day. It can happen quick too. It happens really fast. These things, they ain't messing around when they go to flower.
Yeah. A week in a plant's life is actually extremely fast compared to
Long
a lot of
time,
things.
yeah.
Yeah, I could buy it. All right. Crippled cannabis cowboy. Do you have any beneficial critters walking around there?
Yeah, we got
I know
rose
you've
beetles.
mentioned. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Springtails, rose beetles. We've got the clams, the shrimp, the snails, the crab. Uh, all these things are beneficial to basically cleaning the system. Getting rid of some of those bad pests, some of that algae, and you know, yeah, there's definitely some beneficials. The beneficials are definitely, I would say, a must in an indoor grow. If you definitely
It's like
need the
uh,
good guys.
there's like some kind of steroid shot that they were trying to give my daughters, like prednisone or something like that, right? And it kills
Uh,
both. To me, that would be the same thing as if from an analogy of being in an indoor grow with no microbial life protecting the plant. There is no immune system. So even the slightest little thing like white flies, even fungus gnats, if you're not managing that, they can get out of control so much that when you do walk into a beautiful oasis like this, it's so out of control that they're flying in your mouth. That was usually experienced when people weren't paying attention and they go into their tent after like a long weekend or something, coming back to their plants, and it spreads like wildflowers. That's probably a bad word to use right now, but it spreads like crazy. So yeah, sometimes word choices are terrible, but it spreads so much that it makes it hard to manage that once that takes off, and then there are things called spider mites, russet mites. I mean, the gamut goes deep. But if you're starting off with that microbial life, I would just always view my early setup as that it does have some kind of pest issue, and I need to have these critters crawling around, whether it's in an amusement park setup, or it's in my worm bin, or I'm using fabric pots in an apartment. That worm bin should be the first thing that you set up so that you do have that. And a little scoop. I like to teach kids, little kids, this kind of thing. You show them a tablespoon of soil, living soil that you've made. That has more life in it than there are people on this planet. So we've always said there's worlds upon worlds upon worlds with this, and now you have blended these worlds, and I think that's why this is so interesting. So many nerds that watch this on a Friday night is because it's blending these worlds of aquatics with living soil that I think a lot of people in the cannabis industry have always talked about. It's just nobody's ever actually built it, and here they come kind of thing.
Yeah, like I said, the trick is that it was, like I said, latent in that sand, silt, and clay. It's all about that. It's the sand, silt, and clay, the ratios and getting the ratios correct. But I realized that, like I told you before, trying to mix this stuff in soil is so difficult. I realized that just a layer of it, just put it in a layer over top of the soil or the bottom of the soil, and it does the same thing. You're almost mimicking nature better instead of trying to mix it all into your soil mix and trying to get that ratio proper. Just lay it on top and let the plant do its thing. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's or at least if you're using worms, that they're the ones that are actually doing a lot of that work for you. And so if kind of an old head to this, there's a guy named Subcool, and he was teaching us in the early days. We were using these things like little baby kiddie pools and cooking the soil, not really cooking it, but letting it kind of build up this microbial life. All of those were great things to start with, but again, you level up as the years go by. And from everything that you've heard over the years, now you've taken it to the next level. And I feel like everybody involved in education, that's what everybody wants to see when it's a community-based approach, is that somebody's teaching something, somebody has an idea on it, runs with it, and then here we are talking about something years later that I don't think anybody other than you would have, who knows, but I've never heard anybody talk about this, Josh, They're either
No,
into
you know,
aquaponics or they're into living soil. They're not into blending them. And to be
right.
fair to Leighton and other, I mean, there's a lot of beef between those two worlds where they almost don't want to interact with each other for whatever reason.
Yeah, I kind of noticed that too, watching the videos and listening to like I said, I scan all the platforms. I've listened to Potentonics, and I like Steve, and it is two different worlds. And like Leighton, I heard him say, that him and Elaine always used to beef a little bit about him and his aquatic biology versus the land race biology. And Leighton was like, they're the same, they're one and the same. They're just in different homes, but they're the same breed. They're the same, they're doing the same thing. They're breaking down organic matter into a form that a plant can absorb. Basically, that's what we're after. We're after that cycle, that nutrient cycling. Like everything has to go in, and then it goes out, and it goes back in. It's the cycle of life.
That's why we've always kind of cautioned not to just follow one person blindly like that, because
Yeah,
even if they
exactly.
have good intentions, or sometimes, to be fair to what you just commented on, there's a lot of egos in that. And if someone's
Yeah,
saying something else that supposedly your research hasn't shown you, that doesn't mean that the other person is wrong. And Mother
exactly.
Nature is so complex that if you and I are going to sit here and claim that some human being can figure this out and we should only follow that person, it's not a realistic thing to me. Mother Nature is so complex that's why I love sharing all this, is that we don't really know what's going on, half of us. I mean, a lot of the people that can explain it, they're not growing it. And the people that are growing it, they don't have the home like you do to be able to continue to have it forever, kind of thing. A lot of people are living, myself included right now, I'm stuck renting until the markets change a little bit. And
Yeah, yeah,
so, yeah, you're just, I think we've talked about that privately on other things. That book Outlier, with the opportunities that come people's way, and they put a lot of hours into something, and then they kind of find their purpose and their goals and stuff. And you can have more than one thing, man. But I think this is your thing, dude. This is something that I can tell you're so passionate about. It's just cool to see, man. I think in Virginia they want to know more about obviously your personal life here, what you're smoking on, and you've ever smoked I don't even know how to say that, skunk in Virginia.
no, never heard of it or seen it. Never smoked it, but I'm smoking on what I grew. I'm smoking on the sweet lemon skunk right now, which is the oh shit.
Must be pretty good.
It was out of yeah, it is pretty good. It's very airy, but it was a BC award-winning skunk from the damn name of the breeder is he's out of England, but it came in a box. Damn, I had it in my head just a minute ago. I just can't remember the name. Anyway, it's a sweet lemon skunk. It's supposedly award-winning, one outdoor
Like
award-winning.
from like a super lemon haze and some kind of lemon skunk cross. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
okay?
yeah. It had a lemon haze skunk, and it was something. Like I said, I should have wrote it down before you asked, but I just can't remember the name of the breeder.
Hey, that's all right, man.
It,
I
it'll
think
it'll come to me.
well
Anyway,
when this
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when this kind of stuff happens, it just shows you how hard live shows are. Like
Oh yeah,
to answer
yeah.
all these
Definitely.
questions off your dome, it's pretty tough, man. I don't know if you've messed around with these. I know there's a lot of hard opinions on this. Again, there's one side that doesn't like the other when some of this comes. But what are your thoughts on autos? This bandwagon smoke thinks autos would be lovely. No need to worry about the light cycles. What are your kind of thoughts on that? Have you wanted to play around with autos before, and have you played around with autos?
I have not played around with any autos, but I'm not against it. I would definitely plant a few autos in there and just let them go. I mean, I definitely don't have to mess with the light cycle. That's nice, but I kind of want that light cycle a little bit. It's a totally different thing growing cannabis. I'm trying to incorporate like a light cycle in a system that really typically doesn't see a light cycle. So most aquariums don't run through light cycles. You know, we just have a light on, light off, and it's 12 hours a day or whatever you have it on, and that's it. There's no cycle. You know, the temperature's not changing. You know, so it's a different setup as far as how I'm going to have to run this and keep everything alive that doesn't normally have a cycle, you know, like moss. You know, moss just, it can, winter, summer, it doesn't matter. As long as it stays wet and in the shade, it'll grow. So that's why it's in there, along with the wicking action of the moss. It has multiple purposes, but all the other little trees in there, I don't want any like any annual plants other than the cannabis. I want all the other plants to be able to withstand that cycle. So, you know, like the grasses in the creek, all these grasses can withstand, they can take that cycle change. I'm not dropping the temperature into winter in there. You know, I'm only lowering it down into like maybe the 68, 69 in the summertime when I'm in flower, you know. So I'm going to be switching this. So being indoors is going to be very tricky come summertime when I'm trying to do a cycle like this. Like right now, it's 15 degrees outside. So it's a little difficult maintaining my temperature and my humidity where I want it. So I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to set it where it needs to be set and let it flux, you know, and not really worry about what it does to the plant. The plants are going to be fine. You know, so I'm just going to mimic nature. So I don't have a sealed room. Like I have air pockets all in the building. You know, they're not, you know, sucking in cold air, but, you know, there are, just like a home, you know, they're air pockets. You don't have to have a carbon filter. I don't have a carbon filter pumping out exhaust. I have a mini split, you know, that's doing that for me while it pumps heat into the building. And then I'll switch it over to AC when the summertime comes, and it'll do the same thing, but with cold air. And the dehu is cleaning the air. And then I'm going to have to get a what do you use to clean the air? Shit, just lost my train of thought there. But
Those like atomizer things.
yeah, like
the ozone purifier.
Yeah, air purifier. I'm going to add an air purifier to the room, and just for extra cleanliness of the air. But other than
I would
that,
only do that. I would only do that in veg, though. I'd be careful doing that. And people that play around with some of those, it's like
with the air purifier.
Yeah,
yeah,
they get weird.
I don't have one in there. Yeah, I don't have one in there right now, and I never have had one. It's always been pretty good. I never needed. The dehu has a filter on it.
Yeah.
The mini split has a filter on it. So I clean those filters, you know, once every couple of weeks, and I'm good to go. So the room itself is not sealed off at all. You know, if a mouse wanted to come up underneath the door, it could. So it's not like I'm trying to seal off everything. You know, it's an open door policy here. So I'm just trying to regulate it just on that verge of, you know, not at freezing in there, but it's pretty hard when it's 12 degrees outside and everything is struggling in there. You know, it's hard not to get it down.
The first cycle. Yeah.
And it's the first cycle. It's everything's brand new. So, you know, like you said, in 3 years, time will tell. In 3 years, am I going to have an overgrown jungle in here? Is everything going to be out of whack? You know, and
you'll probably be growing less plants, in my opinion. So you could just manage, like, you know, they'll be bigger, obviously.
Correct. I won't put, you know, 15 plants in there. I'll put, you know, I'll probably veg out some decent little plants before I transfer them over, instead of just putting them directly in like I did this time, because I just wanted to get roots in the system this time. I just wanted to get those roots in there and get them started. And once those roots get in there, those are like my trailblazers. You know, those are the first ones in the bed. They're the first roots to ever penetrate and get down in there. And so once I cut those plants, I'll have plants immediately ready to go in. So I'll already have them growing in pots, sitting right beside them, or just underneath of them, growing little babies. And then as soon as I cut, I'll plant right beside the cut and let those new ones tap right into those old ones, and we'll be off to the races. And then all we got to do is feed the biology. As long as we keep tacking on what we've taken, so we keep adding some good IMO3 and really I have that sand silting clay layer just underneath of the mulch layer. I don't know how that is going to react to a lot of things. So that's a new aspect of where I have serving spots of this sand silting clay running up through the soil. It's kind of an experiment. So it is. I know the roots love it, but I don't know how it's going to react when I go piling stuff back on. Like, how is it going to break down? You know what I mean? Like, is it going to break? Is the soil underneath that layer? Is that layer just going to stay on top of that soil, or is it going to slowly be broken down and seep down into the soil?
It's going to slowly break down, because that even happens in my reptile tanks. But with the
That's
amount of
right.
organic matter you're putting back into it, I don't think it's going to be at the same level that like a reptile tank would be.
Right. So, it's going to be, I'm going to be playing with it throughout this year and just seeing how much of that organic mulch layer breaks down. And once that mulch layer breaks down to where it gets to that sand and silt layer, then I'll be able to see how fast that mulch layer is being broke down. And then I'll be able to see that sand layer again. And then I'll be able to pile back on, and then it'll break down again. And then I'll be able to see how much sand and silt is left over. After maybe a couple of runs, I'll be able to see how much of that sand silt layer is still there and hasn't been broken down and fallen down. And then once the mulch layer gets down and breaks all that down, I'll just add another layer of sand, silt, and clay, and we'll go from there. But I think that'll take years. I don't know if I don't know. We'll see.
That'll take a while for sure. I've noticed some of the brighter minds are also using green sand when they eventually have to re-add. And they've talked to a bunch of like Dr. Lane Ingham style, and for whatever reason, man, the green sand is part of that. And then they've also switched to grasses instead of more of the cover crops. And I think that's gone full circle, because at first, you want everything, you want diversity, but at the same time, labor is also important, especially if it's a larger facility or you're running it by yourself in the garage. Your time is important. So I think those grasses are going to pay off for you as well, without getting too crazy with all the different cover crops. Choosing to go that route, where it is creating all of the protection, the diversity, the exudates, and everything that you need, without the managing of it and the potential aspects of bringing in pests. Because the cover crop blends are fantastic for like a worm bin, I think, growing them out and stuff. But they are pretty hard to manage.
They get out of hand quick.
Yeah. And at first you're like, whatever, and you keep up. But let's be real, man.
It's pretty at first. I mean, it's beautiful.
It's a lot more work. It's definitely a lot more work as the months go by. I mean, it takes a while to kind of all of a sudden you're like, whoa, what the fuck?
Yeah, after your 2 or 3 years of managing a cover crop, it's like, man, I'd rather be managing cannabis plants, not cover crops.
And the grasses make more sense, because it's like, okay, it's pretty hard to get that out of control or anything.
Yeah, I learned real quick. The cutting the grass is a lot easier. Just a few. I don't like that big
30 minutes. Silent Truth wanted to know, I thought that was kind of funny, what about electric eels? And then he was, I guess, wondering, I don't even know, are there such thing as freshwater electric eels?
I don't know. It's a good question. I think, isn't there one in the Amazon? I thought there was a freshwater electric eel in the Amazon River.
I don't know.
I don't know, but there won't be one going. I hate electricity, so I don't like getting shocked. So there's not going to be an electric eel in the pond. Sorry.
I don't like getting shocked either.
Rick, call Rick. Maybe I'll go out to California and build Rick one, and he can fuck with electric eel.
We should have filmed that shit. And then you had a follow up with the salamanders.
Haven't seen it. I've seen it once after I put it in.
Were you
But
saying you thought Leroy got it?
no, Leroy got
Oh,
the crawfish.
oh, the crawfish.
Leroy is not around anymore. The snake had a had an incident, so he didn't make it. But he got too close to the wife. But
Ah, yeah.
the salamander the salamander is still in there. I just don't know where. It's buried itself, and from what I understand, salamanders will go underground and pretty much stay there their whole lives. So
Troy helping us out there. Electric eels are freshwater, but
freshwater, yeah,
like you
that's what
said, you don't want to play around with that. I
I
wouldn't
thought.
want to play around, especially like just chilling in your garage, man. Who knows what could happen? All of a sudden, your wife come downstairs. All right,
Yeah.
Mark Nelson wants to. This is the last question for you, sir. I know it's Friday night. You want to. How many hours in are you? And I would imagine that is like with the build and all of the mess ups and the rebuild. Like, I would imagine this is seemed like maybe a 6 month project or more. Probably years in the head. Brainstorming and then 6 months to build.
Well, actually, I started in March 1st of last year, and we finished at the end of October. So, about 9, 10 months. In my head, I built a model first here in the house. So it was a tiny little small model that I built here on the kitchen table. And I built that out of terracotta clay. And there's a reel of it on my Instagram. You got to go way back, like I don't know, it's like day 53 or 54 or something like that. But I built a model, and the model just gave me more vision in my head. I knew the model wasn't going to be exact, but it just gave me more of a reference in my head as to what I wanted it to look like. So I kind of made it out of terracotta clay and put a little pump in it, and built the stream how I wanted it, and it actually functioned for a minute, for a little bit. And I set that off to the side, and then then the real vision came in my head after I built that. And it took about 10 months, but I didn't work on it every day. Like, I still have a job, I still work. So I did probably maybe an hour a day. Didn't work maybe Saturday, some Sundays. So, you know, figure I might have a couple thousand hours in it over the course of 10 months. So,
Yeah, I mean,
but
you worked hard, but at the same time, not enough to where your wife would,
I
divorce you.
did not kill myself. Dealing with these rocks is a little bit at a time. That's why I did not go to Luckstone and fill my truck up with rocks. That would have been a nightmare.
No doubt.
Because
No
halfway through that, I'd have been punching myself, you
doubt.
know? So I did what I could handle at a time. I put a few in the truck, bring them home, bring them in, set them around. Take me about an hour. The next day after I'd set them in, I'd go make some mortar, set them in. So this happened over the course of 10 months, and just a little at a time. It changed quite a bit in my head. So the first original version is not what we ended up with. So it changed quite a bit as I went along.
Sure.
So I thought I was going to have to drill holes in the creek in order for it to get water into the soil. That was the original plan. Then I realized that the thing was wicking water into the soil anyway, and I didn't have to drill any holes. I just had to figure out a way to manage the wicking aspect of the water, and had to figure out the proper mixture. That took the longest, actually. Messing with the mixture in my wheelbarrow with a water hose took me a couple of weeks of doing that off and on, just messing with it here, messing with it there, just getting that water and getting the mixture right. And it's all about the color. So the color of that sand, silt, and clay, and the color is where the organic matter enters into the clay. So the more a little bit color you get is the more organic matter you get or you have. So the bottom, like I said, the bottom of the creek needs to be clean. It needs to be sand-like a beach, like clear, crystal clean. And then as you're going up that creek, that's where that shelf would come in nicely. If I had that, the bottom of the creek here, and it comes up and create a shelf, and then go over into the bed. That shelf would allow me to put organic matter on top and plant plants, but not be in the channel, but still be in the water, and then still be allowing that wicking action to the moss. So that's the biggest change I would have made, was in the creek system, would be able to allow that me to pile up some more organic matter without it washing down into the fish pond. So I would be able to plant plants and pile a bunch of pea gravel up there and not have it wash down the creek system. But other than that, I mean, I think the design of it is pretty good as far as the functionality of it all. But like I said, there are little things that I would tweak.
Yeah, I mean, there's always gonna be like little things you probably, but like we said at probably the middle of the show, man, you don't want to be tinkering with it too much and just kind of let it Mother
Yeah,
Nature do its thing.
yeah, exactly. Because if you don't let it do its thing, you're gonna miss. Like a lot of times, it has to destroy before it creates beauty. So a lot of times, it looks like shit before it actually turns into a big, beautiful butterfly. So you have to give it time to turn into a butterfly. So this could take months. It could take a couple of years. I don't know, but the less I mess with it at this point, the better off I'm just going to be adding plants. Like people keep wanting me to do this, do that, but I can't do any of that right now because I'm just going to add plants and let it do its thing and observe. So right now I'm in observe mode. So I want to see what's happening. I want to see how everything's going to react to the environment that I have it in. So because it's not like being outside. I know how it would react if I had it outside. I have a fish pond. I've had it for 23 years. I know how that's going to react. I know how my plants react. I know how my fish react. I know how the lilies react. I don't know how it's going to react indoors, bringing it all inside. I'm pretty sure I have a good idea how it's all going to react, but who knows? It's nature. The whole thing could turn to shit tomorrow. I could walk in there and the plants be drooping and I have no idea why they would be that way. If if the environment's right, if everything's going right, I go in there and the plants are drooping. I mean, I'm going to be at a loss for, there's nobody I can call and be like, what
Well, they're
happened?
probably overwatered if they're doing it that way. More than likely they're overwatered.
Yeah, exactly. Or too much light. And that's what I found. It's either light or water. Those are the two main things that if I have those in any way flux majorly, I can see it in the plant. Like if I turn the light up to, all the way up, basically, the next day the leaves are curling, they're not happy at all. I turn the light down, the next day I go in, they look better. That's all I need to know. I'm not trying to go crazy with all the the science behind it. I'm just going to look at the plant, and if it looks bad, I'm going to try and figure out what is wrong with it. I'm going to try and fix that problem. But for the most part, water, light. It's either too much water, too much light. So I've reduced the light. That's easy. Then how did I reduce the water? It was just simply by removing the sand, silt, and clay from the edges of the creek. Once I learned that, I pretty much solved the problem. Now I can just add a little bit at a time and see how it reacts. And by doing it a little at a time gives me all the information I need in order to be able to balance the system out, basically. So now that I don't see water every morning down the bottom of the hole, I know that I don't have any issues. If I see water at the bottom of the hole, then I know that I have an issue and that I'm probably wicking way too much water somewhere. So all I got to do is go remove some sand, silt, and clay, and it's that simple. So
Now we
it's
want to,
basically my valve. The
yeah.
sand, silt, and clay is basically my water valve.
Well, I was just gonna say we want to have you back for like a part 3 when they're flowering out and stuff, and we'll try to figure that out to where we can potentially maybe pre-record or something where we could have you in the grow, so we could because the Friday nights, it doesn't really work out with the
That's the big
lighting.
thing about Friday night. Yeah.
So we'll figure it out behind the scenes, but we want to have a part 3 because the flowering, obviously, I mean, it's cool to grow really big veg plants, but in my opinion, this is where you will probably shine. Is when I was using bog bushy old grower, if you guys are really into the older genetics, and using the microbial life and the kefir and the avocado tech and all of those early kind of things. That was the first time that I was able to find genetics that were actually had pink hues, blue hues. You had this thing called a blue moon rocks, and I think those kind of genetics, if you can go back to some of the older heads with this style where it's a living soil with the aquaponics, it'd be interesting to see how if those colors got a little bit deeper or richer, just because you had so much diversity from the living soil side and the aquaponic side. That it's a fun little lab that you have there, man. And I hope that as the months are going by and years go by, that you do maybe grow some of the newer, grow whatever you want. But I'm saying some of the older genetics, some of the older heads that might not even be alive anymore, the DJ Short, kind of the blueberries and stuff, man. It would be interesting to see you play around with some of those that are the sour diesels, the super lemon hazes, the ones that the grapefruit, the early grapefruits where you're like, damn, man, this is like, what the hell is this? At least in Denver, you don't really see that kind of stuff anymore. Everybody wears the cookie hats and the stuff, and it's gone to a whole different thing. But if you're into growing the plant itself, it's the older genetics that, in my opinion, you might have a real leg up on, man. Growing some of the stuff, Kevin's, Marco's, Divine Pine, that's already a proven winner. But then kind of going back to the old school stuff, I think in time when you're ready or whatever, man, I would encourage you to do that and see what happens, because I think some of that stuff just might be like a little bit bright, just have a little more pungent than some of the stuff we've seen. Because
believe me, if I could find some old school skunk, that's what I'm looking for. I want to find some of that old school skunk.
Well, we got the homie Duke Diamond. I mean, his whole thing is skunk. So if you, whenever you really need that, man, you got my personal number, so we can make it work.
I just picked up some skunk from Luna.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely, man. That's what I mean, man. There's so many bright minds here that I don't want people to get caught up in the hype stuff and cookies and all that. I mean, that's a whole different topic for another day. But when you're growing it at home, just realize that it truly is the different cannabinoids that make it an experience. And so if you're brand new to this, people have always kind of said it, like if you're, let's admit it, if you're like 16, 17 and you walk into a liquor store, right, you got your fake ID and you'd have no idea what to get. You would think that golden grain alcohol would be the best shit, right? Because it has the highest alcohol content. But the reality is, if you've ever tasted that, it's horrible. You can't really enjoy anything like that, especially if you're just drinking on the rocks or something. Where you bring that down a little bit, you find out about aged bourbons and this kind of stuff, and scotches, and you get deeper into it, you realize that time makes a difference. And in my opinion, it's the same kind of way with cannabis. The cannabinoids are more of where you're talking about. So it's THC in this analogy. If you're thinking about that, that would be your golden grains. And just because it has a ton of THC doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be as enjoyable as you think. It's just the other cannabinoids, in my opinion, especially if you're growing, like you were saying, you had some outdoor. So having some outdoor with more of like the CBNs, like if it's a Friday night and you really want to be couch locked, those, in my opinion, are more important than the THC. Like if you can get that up like another percentage or two, and you're trying to find genetics that are really playing around with that, that's that couch lock high for you newbies. I know if you're into this, I'm telling you shit you already know. but the CBN is the extra cannabinoid that kind of makes it what you're seeking, or when you first started to get stoned, where you're like, man, this is so potent. That's the kind of stuff when you're smoking flower that you're after, and then you can eventually kind of get to the puff codes and that kind of thing. Where I know you're the same way, Josh. Like it's cannabis just becomes kind of like a way of life, and so it's a lot easier to just use that for. And at least I'll speak for myself. Like if I'm happy, you know, I want to take a little dab. If I'm not feeling so great, I want to take a little dab. If I want to play Legos with my kids, you know, I take a little dab. I sit down on the floor with them. It's a daily thing, but at the same time, I like that we're entrepreneurs and we're keeping things moving. And I know everybody that's watching this show, especially this long with us on a Friday night, there's something to having the passion so that you want to get up and do it, and then finding ways to monetize it. So I kind of wanted to leave that with you, Josh. How do people find out more about you? I know your Instagram's blowing up. That's at Yellow Skunk Farms on Instagram. I know I was showing your YouTube channel, but I know you've been working on some little side projects and stuff. So whatever you want to reveal and some things you want to tease for part 3, you know, just kind of promote yourself, sir.
Well, yeah, I'm on Instagram, Yellow Skunk Farms. I'm on YouTube at Yellow Skunk Farms. We've got some new stuff coming, definitely for sure. We got a website coming. Just purchased a website. I'm not going to reveal it right this second, but definitely going to have a website coming. And it's not just going to be, you know, for me. It's going to be basically for the natural farming community. So that's going to be coming soon this year. I hope to get that up and running. And then in the Grow project, we're going to probably be adding a turtle here soon. I'm going to add a little turtle little turtle sanctuary. And, you know, the turtle's my spirit animal. It's always been my spirit animal. I had to put a little turtle in there. I don't know if you've seen him or not, but he's a little figurine in there just to get him in there. But there's definitely going to be a turtle coming, and I don't know what kind. I don't know. You know, we're going to figure that out as we go. But once we get the thing built in there for him, it's home built, we'll get a turtle in there, and yeah, it'll be fun. And yeah, we're just going to go into flower and hopefully get some really good flower going, and that'll be fun to see how everything reacts in flower and see how I'm going to string up these big ass buds that I'm going to grow. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it. Some of them might be laying in the creek one morning when I go in there, who knows? But I'm probably going to do, you know, probably fishing line from the ceiling is probably going to be my best bet. Keep certain ones, you know, there's probably only going to be certain ones that I'm going to have to hold up, you know, so maybe just a easy Y stick, you know, just stick a stick up and boop, and lay the bud right in there and let it hold it up like that. And but other than that, yeah, it's yeah.
Can you use stakes too? I don't know how deep it would go, but like we even would break them in half, put a little stake, and then we would personally use Band-Aids, and then you put the Band-Aid around it so it can stretch without it messing.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, the Band-Aid, yeah, stretch, yeah.
And it can get wet to a point, you know. So if you are foliar feeding, it's not like it's
good idea. Yeah, sure.
We got a lot of the ideas. It's just you know, it's hard to talk about all the cool stuff. So this was fun, man. You know, personally, I think you're just a well-rounded. It seems like you're such a well-rounded individual that to be able to put an hour a day into this. I wanted to, you know, I hope you tell your wife that it seems like must be a pretty cool person, man, to let you kind of tinker around. Yeah. So shout out to your wife, you know, because sometimes this stuff doesn't come true unless everybody in the household is on board, or it doesn't come true as quickly as it possibly could when everybody's not like, all right, you know, full steam ahead kind of thing. So just wanted to, you know, encourage your family and other people that want to be entrepreneurs. You know, maybe you have to have that sit down with your wife at the kitchen table. I know I personally did. Sure. I'm sure you did, to say, hey, this is what I want to sell bugs, and I think you should quit your job at National Jewish Hospital and come sell bugs with me. You know, at first that sounds stupid and probably like, but that's what I mean, man. The passion projects are where you can find that niche, and I have no doubt that you will continue to run with this, man. And in my opinion, but in a few years, I think everything always takes a few years. But
Oh
you
yeah, for
will
sure.
you'll have monetized this with people asking you to either build it or consult for them or whatever, and you'll have your business and your e-commerce and all the things that come with giving away all of the education for free. And for whatever reason, however life works that way, man, I know you will be blessed when it comes back around to you.
Well, I appreciate that, but same goes for you, man. The same goes for you, 100%.
I'm
Yeah, the
feeling
only
it. That's why I want to give it to
yeah,
all our viewers, man, because that shit is
yeah,
real. And
yeah,
when you
it
are
is
down
for
on your
sure.
luck, it doesn't sound like, well, that's great, but it's not going to happen for me, kind of thing, you know. And that's why we use that analogy that it's almost like a radio. You got to fine tune and dial in whatever that frequency is.
I tell you,
It
it's a
works.
mindset. It's a mindset thing for me. It really was. Once I changed my mind on how I saw things and how I was just looking, and it was really about like I was in a conventional farming process, thought mindset. And once I changed over to the natural farming, everything, my life changed. Not just farming, not just growing cannabis, not just my whole being, just everything changed. And I saw things differently. I wanted to be healthier. I
Mm.
stopped drinking soda. I stopped drinking beer. I just my whole life changed in the last 4 years since COVID. Basically COVID for a lot of people changed a lot of things. It was a scary moment for a lot of people, and for me, I was just like, how am I gonna get my weed? And when I'm gonna be able to get my,
Yeah.
I don't
The
grow any of my
necessities.
stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what if I can't get to what if I can't get to my boy? What if I can't get to my dude?
Yeah.
Man, what am I gonna do? I got to learn how to grow. I need to learn how to make for my own self, what I've been buying from other people. And that's where it all started. And I was just, I got into the Future Cannabis Project and found you and found Leighton and found Marco, and everything just has snowballed from there. And it will continue to snowball because I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to stay. And, this whole project that I've started has now become my job basically. So I'm going to treat it as a business now. And it's more of a hobby turn business, and that's what I've always wanted. I wanted to create something from a hobby, like, and it's the American dream basically. You want to start something, grow it, and flourish with it, but also take other people with you. You can't do it by yourself. You got to have a good crew. You got to have good people. I've been in business for myself for 20 years. I know what it takes to be successful. I mean, I started in 2006, right as the economy was taking a tank. You know what I mean? I start
Wow.
I started a business at the worst possible time, and it took 10, 12 years to even get, back up above water. So I treaded water for 12 years. So I know what it's like to tread right on that line and just pay the bills,
Mm.
and just getting by. And then just to have something change in your life, and it just takes off, and it can happen quick. But you got to be ready for it, and you got to be mentally ready and mentally prepared, or else it can catch you. You'll miss the opportunity, because I believe everybody gets opportunities in life, but some people miss them. And that opportunity, when it comes along, like I think right now is a huge opportunity for natural farmers to get in, because it's brand new. It's so new to everybody. Nobody I talk to knows about natural farming. Like, you mentioned it to natural farming to anybody other than who we talk to and hang around, they have no idea what I'm talking
Mhm.
about. And that's why it's so new, and there's so much room for growth in the business of natural farming if you want to get into the business. But I think that the business aspect of it needs to be in a community. It needs to be built by a community, because a single person can't do it. All I'm doing is bring awareness and I tried to create something that was going to make people stop scrolling, really. Just, keep doing this all day long. And in the cannabis world, it's kind of hard because, that's all you see is, oh, that's a nice looking bud. Yeah, that's a good looking bud. Yeah, that's a good looking bud. Every single one. That's good looking weed. Yeah, that's good looking. That's good looking. That's good looking. But how'd you get there? Like, I found Marco's page. I was like, holy shit. This is a freaking cannabis. This is a page that actually is teaching you how to grow cannabis. He's actually showing you how he gets there. You know, other than just showing a pot and a nice looking plant, how the hell did you get there? You know what I mean? And most of them
Yeah.
got there with using a bottle and by going to the grocery store. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've been there. There's nothing wrong with going to a grocery store and getting what you need to grow a good plant. But
Yeah,
I want,
that Athena is kind of taking that
yeah, and you know what? I don't
aspect
have a
of it.
problem. I say I don't have a problem, but I don't want people to use it because there's a better, cheaper way, and you can get a lot better, healthier product.
You have to be really good at growing to use Athena to have it.
You got to be on your game, that's for sure. You got to know
There's a
what you're
guy.
doing.
We
Yeah.
got this dude. We've interviewed him. Marco and I interviewed him. His name's Mile High Dave.
Yes.
He's
Yeah.
kind of well known around here and stuff.
Yep.
But
Yep.
he's kind of like that person that I would throw in there where they're like, well, can
Mhm.
synthetic growers really? Yeah, I think so. But I
Yeah.
also think that guy has about 20 years of experience. So
Yeah.
when you're brand new to this, do you want to put 20 years in to get to the level that he's at to achieve that? Or do you just want to trust Mother Nature from day one so that if you really put in 20 years with a living soil system,
Yeah.
you're going to be, that's going to be almost like the Garden of Eden or something with the
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to tell people. It's like, look, if you put 20 years into growing cannabis, yet you don't have 20-year-old soil. You know what I mean? You don't have biology that's 20 years old. You don't have the natural aspect of 20 years of anything in a
Yeah.
pot that you've grown. You know what? You've just been growing in some medium, in some soil medium or whatever you want to call it, but it's not soil. You know, if it doesn't have sand, silt, clay, it's not soil.
The
You
life.
know,
It's got to have
it has
life
to
too, in
have,
my
it has to
opinion.
have life, you know,
Yeah.
and that sand, silt, and clay will be there. Like Elaine says, you know, that one grain of sand, just a grain of it, has enough mineral in it to grow a plant. You know, it just has to be broken down to its finest form. And biology is what does that. The organisms in the soil breaking everything down. And the more diversity you have in that soil, the more secondary metabolites you're going to create. And that's what we're really after, are those secondary
Absolutely.
metabolites. And those secondary metabolites are what's giving you that flavor and those and that CBN, all the different elements in the little sac there, in that little trichome, whatever it is, sac that's in the end of that
Bulbous.
damn flower.
Bulbous
Yeah,
head is, yeah.
that bulbous head there, that the juice. You know, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I want to get so much diversity that the expression of the plant is totally different than anybody else's grow. And you'll be
That's
able
why
to
you need
see.
those old genetics, man. We'll talk
Yeah,
about it offline, but yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that's because I think there's just a whole new world that could potentially open up, and because when we like in the early days when it was hydroponic and people were using the rock wool and everything, again, you have to have a hell of a skill set to achieve something that doesn't all taste the same,
yes.
but and the colors and all that. So then when Living Soil came around here in Denver, myself included, like I was never that good at the synthetic grows. Like it kind of all smelled and tasted the same. Like, granted, we probably didn't have the right clones. Like if it said Blue Dreams, it wasn't probably the. So who knows what we were really growing? But it seemed like in the early days, all the shit tasted and smelled the same pretty much. And then when it went to a living soil grow, and we started to see those same genetics that we were putting into these hydroponic setups, we started to put those same clones into these living soil, and all of a sudden the plant looked totally different. We were learning how to foliar feed, like I had mentioned with the kind of like the hacks and stuff with the Epsom salts. So that magnesium would really get the plant to just be, like you were saying, with those praying leaves, just a little bit healthier so that she would grow veg a little bit faster, a little bit bigger. Then she'd be able to manage, because her stalk was thicker, how you were saying, the heavy weight of growing a nice harvest. And the living soil aspect to it is just a game changer. If you're so new to this in 2025 that you're watching this, especially on replays and stuff, that's where we get a lot of the newer growers from. what he's dropped on you today is probably taken over a decade for most people to start to understand. And so when you're starting to also then, to me, this would be like level 2 or level 3, however you look at living soil. Then maybe Korean natural farming is level 2. Level 3 could potentially be the living soil IMO mix with now aquaponic microbes mix. And then let's see what happens with really tried and true high-end genetics, you know, the F5, F6, kind of maybe going deeper on those lines and see what you can run with and create. That would be a fun project to watch. And I think you would get all the amusement park fans, and then you get the real heady nerd genetic types, the Chad Westport types that would be following you just as deep because of the genetic profiles that you're choosing. So I have to run. I know my wife by this time is always managing my kids is kind of nuts for this long. But I could talk to you forever. That's why we want to have a part 3. Again, man, I just think, especially in the early days, I just thought that this was something that was going to be cool. And it was, in a weird way, it was nice to hear you say that you did have those moments where you were second guessing yourself and you wondered if it was going to work, because I think every entrepreneur in their little niche goes through that, where it's like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm putting hours a day into this. What is this going to achieve? And then eventually, like you said, you get over this little hump, or you go over the mountain where you can kind of see more over the horizon, and you see that it's making sense, it's starting to work, and then, man, pushing that snowball down the hill, boy, that's the fun part.
Once it starts rolling, man, it's on.
Absolutely.
You know, it's just, you need to be ready. You need to have a plan. Having a plan is key. You know, you don't want to get caught off guard. That's the thing. So, you know, I guess my point is with that is planning out, having that 6P rule. You know, proper planning prevents piss poor performance. That's been stuck in my head since I was a kid. You know, it was taught to me by an older gentleman, and he's a lot wiser than me. But he's always told me proper planning prevents piss poor performance. 6P rule. Remember it. You know, have a plan. Even if it doesn't work out along the way, you still have that end goal. Just go around the problem or fix the problem. Each problem that you're gonna have problems, but you need to figure out how to solve those problems as you're getting to that end goal, because you're always gonna have a problem. There's always gonna be problems, and trying to solve those problems is the fun part for me, and it should be for a lot of people. You know, most people should have fun when a challenge occurs. You know, you sit down, you think about it. A lot of times, if you don't wig out, so to speak, and just sit down and think about what you're doing, and really put the time and energy into maybe even asking for help sometimes, because I have asked for help quite a few times, and that's helped me quite a bit. You know, Kevin said it best, I think. Like, if you need help, you help other people. And that's stuck with me. So that's what I want to do. I want to help other people achieve a feeling that I have right now, which is basically the feeling of being able to go outside and see something that I built, and it makes me feel good to know that I built that. You know what I mean? Like, go outside and say, hey, look, I did this. I had a plan in my head, and I achieved it. And that to me is very important for a lot of people, I think, to be able to just start something, but don't quit. Like, there are gonna be hard times, there are gonna be challenges, but don't quit. Just keep pushing along. Keep each little thing you come across, you're gonna have to figure it out, and don't be afraid to ask for help. That's a big thing. Like, I definitely had to ask for a few people, you know, advice. You and Marco and Leighton, all these people, you know, I've looked to for advice, and I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for you guys. So, you know, my hat's off to you guys for spreading all that knowledge. Now I've done something that I can be proud of, and I can go along and spread that knowledge to other people while giving you guys props for what you taught me, and we all grow at the same time. So,
yeah, I love that aspect of it.
You know,
well,
we are all going to grow. So that's the big thing. I want inspiration. That's all I want for this, is for people to be inspired to go out there and do something. So.
Oh yeah, same here, man. especially when we're talking about genetics. So next week we have Robbie from Nerds Genetics. I'm sure you guys have heard me talk, especially the shows that he's been mentioning. I've talked about him for a long time, and one of the reasons why for Robbie is when Duke Diamond got himself hemmed up, Robbie was the first one to respond to me and gave away a lot of like super high end genetics to raise money for him. So that I thought that said a lot about his character. And then the other one is that truthfully, his genetics around town here in Denver in the underground game are legendary. That Wody and some of the other stuff that MJ and I have spoke on. There's a reason why we kind of maybe underhandedly talked about those genetics is because when you're talking about business, the only business is repeat business, and some of those genetics are what bring people back. And I think having a catchy name like the Wody and some of that other stuff. So shout out to Robbie. We're going to interview him next week. If you're newer to that, I think something is special when you're using a living soil breeder, and Robbie is a living soil breeder.
Real quick, I just wanted to say that Robbie from Nerds, that's where Yellow Skunk came from. I actually got Nerds Genetics is a Daddy Fat Sack.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's cool, so man.
I got Daddy Fat Sacks crossed with Yellow Hammer's Blueberry Skink. And I crossed those two and got Yellow Skunk.
That's great, man.
So,
all right, guys. So stick around for part 3. Make sure you guys are following him on Instagram. Again, you guys can help out the show supporting Mark, MI Beneficials, Kevin with OK Calyx, myself with Rubber Ducky Isopods, and TerrariumTribe.com. We'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.